Hey, welcome to Lean Lunch. Thank you all for your patience. Technical difficulties again. We'll see. We'll see if we can work past those. Google's being a little bit of a pain to us. I think it's multi-account type stuff, but we'll leave it there. So this is Aaron Eden. I'm one of the principals here at Moves the Needle, and we have with us today Ismail Elshareef from Moves the Needle. Welcome, Ismail.
Hey Aaron, how are you? Good to be here. I'm from
Um,
Edmunds.com.
Thank you, thank you. And Mr. Seth Webster?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Awesome. So a couple quick announcements. Let's see here. So a little background really quickly around Moves the Needle, and then we will dive into our conversation with Ishmael. Um, Moves the Needle really focuses on helping enterprises to get their employees to behave more like entrepreneurs and help their leaders with understanding how they need to behave differently. The situations where that tends to sort of manifest itself is, you see companies, they get to the point where they've nailed their core market and they're starting to look for new ways to innovate, launching of new products, or maybe they're finding that competitors are coming along and starting to eat their lunch a little bit. Or they get to that point where they've got much thicker middle management layer, and teams start working in silos and stop collaborating and things like that. Those are really some situations that you can look for in your enterprises that will key you into the fact that you may want to be looking to apply some of these lean startup principles to break those situations down. So for Moves the Needle, we've got a couple events coming up. Let's see here. Sorry, my little notepad just freaked out on me, so I can't actually see it. So we've got, let's see. So next week we have Intuit Innovation Leader Jeff Zayas is going to join us for Lean Lunch. Should be pretty exciting to hear about what his team is up to over there. The following week, the MTN folks will be out in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. We've got a client engagement out there, and then some local startup events that we're going to do. So check out our events page for those. And then the week after that, the first week of August, we will be doing a webinar with the Unleash WD folks on Tuesday. A lean branding panel, which should be pretty interesting, with Brant and a couple. I'm trying to remember who the other folks are. A couple folks that are focused on branding and specifically how to apply lean startup principles to build your brand. And then later that week, we will have a Lean Lunch guest, Greg Fraley, who's a creativity and sort of front-end innovation consultant with us on Lean Lunch. So lots of good stuff coming up from Moves the Needle, so check out movestheneedle.com/events to see all the good stuff coming up. We're always looking for feedback and suggestions for ways that we can continue adding value to your enterprises. So let us know. So enough promotional stuff. Let's dive in and learn from Ishmael. I know he's got lots and lots to share, but why don't we start by Ishmael? Tell us just a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of how you arrived at where you are, and then we'll start talking about how you've been applying some of these lean startup principles with your API work and Hackamotive work.
All right, thanks so much for having me, guys. I've been an engineer, back-end and front-end engineer for the past, I would say, I don't know, 20 years, 17 years. And over the past 6 years, I started off at Edmunds as the head of front-end engineering, and I built out that team. And so I was working a lot with, building out the object-oriented JavaScript, bringing in best practices from engineering practices into the front-end development world. And then we started talking a lot about APIs and how our API capabilities could actually benefit open development. And by open development, I mean third-party developers taking advantage of our capabilities to build out solutions for our customers. Talked about it for a few years, to be honest, and then what happened was I moved over from the engineering department into managing this brand new initiative that is our open platform initiative. And that's basically was about taking our APIs that are powering our mobile sites and apps and our main website and opening them up and see if there's traction out there and kind of get developers to use those capabilities to build out solutions. So that's kind of like how that transition happened, and I've been doing that since the end of 2011. So it's going to be almost 3 years in September, and it started off with high uncertainty of whether this initiative is even worthwhile, worth our money, worth our time, worth our effort. Because we didn't know if there's demand out there, but we kind of had a gut feeling that this is something that we should be exploring. So the high uncertainty made our approach with it very lean, and we needed to validate things very quickly. And lo and behold, now looking back, now with hindsight 2020, it was a very tumultuous time for us in the beginning. But during that time, we just thought it was, what, this is awesome, this is fun, let's just go out there and see what happens. Now we have successful partnerships using our data, using our APIs to build out solutions and experiences for customers in the automotive space. So we're very happy about that.
Very awesome. So tell me a little bit for you personally, when you think about that journey early on when this was sort of a beginning nugget of an idea and you were trying to decide organizationally whether you should continue to invest in that. Dive a little bit deeper into what that looked like, what it was like to go through that.
Right. I think one of the biggest things that kind of worked in my favor or worked in the favor of the Open Platform Initiative was that the chairman of the company, Peter Steinloff, was and still is a huge supporter of open data and open platform. And he was a major help in getting that initiative, which again had a lot of a high uncertainty surrounding it, go through the company and become a reality. There was a lot of pushback from, a lot of executives and also from the legal team. A lot of people didn't understand why we're doing this, why we're opening up our data, potentially cannibalizing our business when we're doing really well as we are right now. So that kind of took a lot of convincing, cajoling, like a lot of one-on-one meetings, just talking to people, understanding where they're coming from and trying to put things in the terms that they understand to get them on board, and having the chairman of the company, the owner of the company, being one of those people explaining the benefits and the potentials and the opportunity behind open data was very, very helpful.
It's interesting, actually, in what you just talked about. If you think about the process of launching a new product, so as you put yourself in a startup shoes for a moment, you don't, those things about going and getting legal approval and that kind of stuff don't really come into play. But coincidentally, the same process that you're applying in launching a new product, where you start by getting some empathy for the end customer and really understanding their world, and then beginning to experiment to try to get the customer to to engage with you around whatever the product is. It sounds like you were actually applying those same principles to try to get internal buy-in.
Absolutely.
How did that work?
And as a startup, you need co-founders, right? You need help. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. So one of the things that you have to do to get people excited about your idea is to convince them why this is something that they should invest their time and effort, and probably not getting compensated really well for it in the beginning. Like, why are they doing this? So you need that story, and you need to be able to understand what motivates those people, your partners, your investors, or whoever you're talking to, trying to convince them to join you, what motivates them, and try to put it in terms they understand. And that's what we did, because the initiative would not have happened if the executives and the legal team said, no, we're not gonna bother with this. We don't want to do it. We don't even see, because in the beginning they couldn't even see like the dollar amount because I couldn't explain what amount of money we're going to be able to generate from this initiative. So for them, it was very mysterious. It was very kind of like pie in the sky kind of an idea. So it was really hard for them to wrap their head around it.
How long did it take once you started getting some traction to bring them around?
Yeah, that took a few months. A few months of just repeating the message, talking about it more and more and more, and actually having one-on-one meetings or going out to lunch with some of those folks and just explaining things to them. And as I said, the chairman of the company wanted it to happen, so it was going to happen. It was just about like what kind of resources or what kind of leeway was I gonna get to make it happen, to make it successful. Because as we know, in big companies, big and small, there's a lot of initiatives kind of get some verbal approval or like the nod and get starved of resources and starved of real opportunity to be successful. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not in that world or not in that situation.
Has there been a moment yet where somebody said, you were right, this is really cool?
It's funny, nobody said that, but what was happening is that people now started to pay attention and started to take interest in the open platform initiative, and that's kind of like their way of saying, oh, there's something there that I want to be part of, and that in and of itself was a huge nod of approval.
That was sort of an unspoken validation, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
You don't have to necessarily reveal names, but I'd love to go in as deep as we can on that, because I think that process of really understanding your internal stakeholders and applying these same principles of empathizing with them and figuring out how to tweak your message so that they're on board internally, right? So this is really one of the key components that makes Lean Startup very different in the enterprise than it is in a startup, is that you're actually having to sort of fight that battle on two fronts. You're having to figure out, how am I going to create this API, and is there a customer on the other side that will actually use it, and how do I get my internal stakeholders on board to actually let me do it, right?
Right.
So like, can you think of an example of someone where you were able to build that empathy with them, and maybe you were going in with one message, and based on what you learned, you were able to tweak it and had it come away with a different message?
Yeah. So the biggest and the clearest example, I would say, is legal, right? The legal department, our legal counsel, was not really a big fan of opening up our data initially. And with good reason. From his perspective, it was about protecting the company, protecting our content, which is something that we generate. It's proprietary. He just didn't understand why we're doing this and why we were potentially putting ourselves in a situation where our business can be cannibalized. So initially, it was like me saying, no, this is an amazing opportunity, you just don't get it, we have to do it, this is awesome, you just approve it, come on, let's get moving. But when I started thinking about why he was balking at the idea and kind of thinking in terms of like putting myself in his shoes and thinking, yes, I want to protect the company, so what are we going to do? How am I going to communicate to him like the checks and balances we're going to have in the open platform to ensure that we don't have people abuse the service that we're putting out there, using our data in an unmonitored way or unchecked manner to cannibalize our system. So once I started explaining like the API quota limits, the API quota increases that we'll give to people after seeing what kind of implementation and integration they've done, working with people on things like that. That's when he started to understand. Okay, now I see what you're talking about. Now I see how we can protect our assets and also allow for innovation. And that's when he started coming around.
Great, that's a wonderful example. Thank you.
You bet.
So then, so what other, you've got really like I think you and I talked a little bit beforehand about really diving into how how you were able to utilize customer observation and user testing and some of these lean startup principles through that process. And I think you wanted to touch a little bit on Hackamotive. So what is Hackamotive, and how does Hackamotive play into what you've been able to do with regard to this API journey?
Right. So Hackamotive is our public hackathon where we invite a lot of smart people from all over the country to come to our headquarters in Santa Monica, California, and help us kind of brainstorm and think of ways that we can better serve the automotive consumer and also dealerships, the automotive dealerships, through software solutions that could benefit them, and building those solutions on top of our open and available data. The great thing about having open data is that you don't have to go through permissions of getting access to the data. You don't have to go through like FTP servers, downloading the data, and somebody has to compile it for you. If you have an idea and you want to test it out, the data is there. You can just combine it, mash it up, and do whatever you want to do with it to validate your idea pretty quickly. And so Hackamotive was one of the channels that we kind of got behind and really promoted and pushed to get those kind of engagements going on. But we also, before even Hackamotive, we saw that, believe it or not, internally, the amount of innovation and the volume of innovation and just quick validation has increased when we opened up our APIs, because now developers, internal developers, don't have to kind of start up a Java service from scratch, so where they can actually get the data from and put it outside on a Heroku server or whatever, in order to kind of play around with a small prototype anymore. Now they can just create an account on our developer portal and get access to all that data and build up a quick prototype on their machine at home outside of the admin's data center. So that allowed a lot of people, not a whole lot of people, but enough people internally to ideate quickly and show prototypes in a very short amount of time. So.
Do you have an example of one where there was like an internal developer that did something like that discovered or learned something pretty cool?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I always use as an example of how the APIs actually help make it faster, make it happen faster and quicker, is a project that we worked on of actually taking a picture of a window sticker at a dealership of a car, and then quickly figuring out what that window sticker is about, what that car is about, by using Mechanical Turk and so forth. So we actually built a tool for the Mechanical Turk folks to use using our API. So now that page existed on an external server and allowed the Mechanical Turk individual to basically punch in the information he or she is seeing on the window sticker on that image into that form and quickly validate what that vehicle is about before you publish it. So that was done and was completed in a few days. In the past, it would have taken I don't know, a few weeks, because now you have to expose the data to the outside world so that Mechanical Turk can get access to it and so forth. But it happened very, very quickly just because our APIs were available. So that's just an example of how things happen.
Very cool. Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you get those side benefits of having focused originally on one particular problem set you were trying to solve, opening up the data, and then there's these sort of unexpected surprises and benefits and cool things that happen as a result of that. It's the same thing. I think you probably have some examples of where you guys have done some other lean experiments where you meant to do one thing but had a litany of other cool unexpected side benefits.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's plenty. I mean, the biggest example that I can think of how we applied lean to this whole initiative is from the very, very beginning, where we decided to open up what APIs we have and just see if there's demand in the market for it. So we didn't go ahead. We didn't actually spend a few months building like these perfect APIs from scratch to make sure that the developers can benefit from them and leverage them right away. No, we just opened up what we had and just said, you know what? There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this initiative. So let's just first see if people are going to use our APIs, yes or no. To our surprise, the demand was super high, and that's when we started like tweaking and refactoring and launching new versions of our API as a result of that. But that's a critical principle of Lean, is that you need to get validation as fast as possible that there's demand for what you're offering, and that's what we did with our data.
With regard to Hackamotive, with a big event like that, were you able to apply some of these principles in creation of that event? I suspect. Actually, I should give a little bit of context as to why I'm asking that. One of the key questions that we get constantly from folks is like, oh, it's great. These techniques work wonderfully in software, but like it's not going to work for me. So in the process of creating an open innovation initiative around pulling in developers from the outside and getting them to come up with innovative new solutions, how were you able to apply these principles in that context?
Right. So during Hackamotive, we've always encouraged, and working with Aaron and Ben on a workshop to kind of like set people up to understand that their ideas might be great, but if there are no customers interacting with them right away, they're kind of useless. So we really encourage people to, the moment they come up with a semblance of an idea or semblance of a solution, to go out there right away, out of the building almost, talk to people on the street, talk to people at dealerships, put the solution in front of them. Do they like it? Do they have feedback on it? Is that something they would use? And then come back with that feedback, iterate over it, do it again. And it's amazing what people, so for example, there's, in the last Hackamotive, there was a company called Beacon that came in with a solution that they wanted to create a test drive, an extended test drive using the OBD device in a car to make it a connected car. So basically, the dealership can give the car to the customer where they can test drive it for a few days and not have to worry about the car because they can track it because now the car is connected to the internet and so forth. So the team came in with one idea of like how exactly they're gonna do it, but then after talking to customers and talking to dealerships and getting their feedback on it, they pivoted completely from their initial idea. Not completely, like they didn't change the goal of what they're trying to accomplish, but the steps, the process changed dramatically based on the feedback that they've gotten, and that was in the span of a day and a half. Within a day and a half, they got all of this feedback because we forced them to go out and validate that idea against their biggest stakeholders, which is the dealerships. If the dealerships don't want to put that device in the cars, they don't have a solution. They don't have a product. So make sure that the dealerships are on board. Make sure that the customers are interested in something like that. What would they want to track about the vehicle? Are they more likely to close a deal if they have that kind of service? Because if the customers are just going to use it as, hey, I'm just going to test drive this car, it's cool, and are not really serious about buying the car, then it's not going to be worthwhile for the dealership. So you have to kind of put your business hat on and figure out how your solution is going to convert for your stakeholders.
You mean your dealers weren't interested in giving away a free 2-day rental?
Yeah, no, it's funny because now when you think about it, the dealers were not interested in doing that for their new cars, but they're interested in doing it for their loaner cars, because their loaner cars are already being taken out as rentals all the time, but they have no visibility into these cars. So there's a few things going on here that the team used to kind of tweak their offering to make it attractive to both dealers and consumers. I know, it's hard to convince dealers to adopt a solution that's, first of all, cutting edge, that is completely new, untested, and also, asking them to put their assets out there on the streets with random people.
Do you Do you know exactly how the teams work to convince the dealers to give it a shot?
Um, I'm not. I don't think I know the details of like the how they. I don't have stories like at the top of my mind right now of how they convince them, but it was all about talking to them about the value that they'll get. So, for example, I know that they talk to dealerships about the the Tread example. There's a company out of Seattle called Tread that is seeing 40% conversion when they actually take the car from the dealership, deliver it to the customer at home or in the office, and have the customer test drive it in their own environment without the salesperson from the dealership being involved. So that's kind of similar to what they're trying to do, but they're trying to automate the entire thing. So there's not even a single person, not even from Tread, present during that test drive. So with Tread seeing 40% conversion, that means customers who test drive a car for an extended period of time are more likely to buy the car that they've tested. So, and that's kind of like the rationale that we use to get dealers on board.
Interesting. Cool.
What I love about that whole story also is that I think when you sort of abstract from the details of you guys applying lean startup principles to figure out what you needed to put in the API and starting to build this community around the API, you were applying these principles internally. But then you very quickly shifted to now helping your partners and helping these other teams that were coming in to also apply these principles to be more effective, which in turn helps things, obviously on the long term benefits you, right? So I think the takeaway for folks inside other enterprises that are trying to figure out how to make this work is that that starting point of applying it to yourself first and figuring out how it works and benefiting from it, but then very quickly looking for opportunities to help others apply it, you reap huge rewards in following that pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know it works for us, so we want to make sure that anyone that we touch is following the same principles, because instead of having them spin their wheels and build stuff that we know is not going to get traction or might get kind of mediocre traction in the beginning, have them do the legwork in the beginning before they put something out, and so hopefully that when they put something out there, it will be successful. And we're seeing that more and more and more. And it's funny, we're doing it also with just the larger developer community who's using our API. For example, if you want to use more of our data, you have to prove to us that your prototype or your solution is actually worthwhile or has traction before we give you more access to our data. By more access, I mean increase your quota, your API quota, so you can make more calls. So every gate has to be validated. You have to validate your solution before you get past the next gate. So.
I love that idea. Can you go a little bit deeper into that? So, like, what's a first gate that somebody needs to go through?
So the first gate is all our API calls are are two calls a second and 5,000 calls a day. It's not a lot, but it's not like a couple of calls per day. So it's enough where you can build a prototype and validate it. So if you come back to, if you want more of that, more access to our data and more calls per day, you have to come back to us and say, I want more calls, and we'll come back with a list of questions. Okay, so you want more calls? Let's see what prototype you've built. What kind of traction are you getting? What kind of relationships have you built to kind of like get that prototype out to market in a good place? So we ask them questions about how do you know that this is going to be successful? Have you done your homework? And ask probing questions, and then people will be like, well, I haven't really thought about that. So what we say is, well, think about it, come back to us, and we'll increase your quota. Increasing the quota for the API is free. It's not, we don't charge for any of that. But we just want to make sure that people who have a higher access to or a higher frequency of access to our data know what they're doing and they're following the right steps in making their solution successful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you a few minutes ago, how do you ensure that the apps that people are building are of some sort of even ancillary value to Edmunds? Like, how do you ensure that you're not just providing a comparative car shopping service to a competitor, essentially, right?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I have partnered up. I have a great relationship with our business development folks and team at Edmunds.com. So before we raise the quota to any of our partners, I always have them go through a semi-interview process with our business development team. And what happened was, and still happening, is that the biz dev team kind of finds opportunities of partnering with some of these folks and say, you know what, we can actually help you guys scale. We love your solution and we think there's value there. Why don't you continue building it out and we'll help you scale by introducing your solution to our larger partner community and actually, introduce it as a premium product, and you guys can make money and we can make money as well. So having the biz dev component to the initiative has been the single most important thing that I've done. I think is to have that partnership with these guys, because that allowed the open platform to be profitable.
And of course, because you're such a genius, you knew that was going to be one of the core components of the service when you decided to push building it, right? You saw that coming, right?
It's so funny because in the beginning, the chairman of the company, everybody was like, "Oh, we don't want to charge for this. This is a free service." But I knew, like, nothing. Like, after a few years, everybody's going to be looking at ROI, revenue. Like, what is this doing for the company? What is this? How is this affecting the bottom line, right? Even though it started as, we just want more innovation, more branding, and so forth. But so knowing that revenue is, at the end of the day, is going to be at the bottom line, made it mandatory for me to partner with as many people within the company that are willing to listen and are excited about the initiative. And I have to say, the business folks and the sales guys within Edmunds, where they understood the value right away, they got it, and they were a huge supporter of the initiative and of me, and been very supportive along the way. So I got to say, they're awesome, and they help the initiative be successful.
How did you? I suspect that's another case where building those relationships and really having that empathy for the other partners and stakeholders inside the company was what allowed you to get to that point. How did you actually get to that discovery that they would be a valuable partner in this case?
Right, that's a really good question, because as I said in the beginning, I just talk to everybody, right? And it's kind of like who I am, right? I like to talk to everybody, and like, oh, this is what I'm doing. We're launching this API thing. Data is going to be available. So when I talk to the sales guys and the biz dev guys, they got it right away. And then they started giving me more ideas. They're like, yeah, and we can do this, we can do that. And that's when I started thinking, oh my God, these guys are so dialed in. They understood it. They understood the value right away, and it just really, no convincing needed to happen. It was just more of like, hey, I'm doing this, and they got it, and then we started working together. And it was fantastic. It was the easiest thing for me to do. Like, I didn't need to convince them. And I think those are the kinds of relationships that you need to be looking out for. People that you need to convince more, or having a hard time convincing about your initiative, might not be the best people to kind of back you up or provide value initially, maybe. But people that get it right away, and they offer more ideas, and they're kind of more interactive with you, as opposed to you just telling them what you have. Those are the ones that you need to look into and see how you can support them, because they're willing to support you. How you can support them in their areas, like, for example, the biz dev guys, they just needed more business for the company. They needed to generate more revenue. So in me introducing those companies to them and telling them, hey, you guys might want to talk to these guys, and you might want to look at those guys, help them generate more revenue, and in turn makes their interest in the product and in the platform much more profound and rooted in success.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you discovered a problem that they had, right, which was that they weren't getting as much deal flow as they would like,
Right.
and the initiative that you were trying to pilot could potentially solve some of that problem, and so they latched onto it right away. It's, if you were launching a startup and you're going out to customers and you're getting sort of a lukewarm response from those customers, they're probably not the customer segment you want to work with early on, right? And I think
Absolutely.
you're saying almost the same thing, just in a different context.
Absolutely, and what I loved about the biz dev guys is, without even me telling them, when they went out to talk to eBay, Toyota, Honda, meetings I wasn't even involved in, they brought up the open APIs. They brought up the open data because they understood the value that offered to that particular company. So having your partners and having your supporters understand the value, really understand the value, will make it so much easier for you as the founder or the head of the startup to get that message out there. So in the beginning, I would say in the first year and a half, nobody, like the big companies, didn't even know that we had an open API. Didn't even know that our data was available through a standard interface, right? So a lot of them were surprised. But it took the sales team and the biz dev team to bring it up and have that conversation with them, and that's when these companies started saying, oh, we got to check it out. And then they went ahead and checked it out, and they liked it, and that's where that engagement started.
So it's actually gotten to the point now where some of those bigger companies are starting to build against the APIs, or is the relationship different in that case?
No, so let's say, for example, eBay. eBay uses our data and our content to power their new vehicle motors channel, right?
Oh, awesome.
So they're using our data to kind of enhance the content and enhance the experience of their own channels for their consumers. Toyota is doing the same thing. We're working with Microsoft right now on a big deal to introduce our data into their Bing engine and the MSN engines as well, MSN Autos. We're working with Ask.com, FindTheBest.com. There's a lot of these big companies that are using our data to enhance their experiences, but also to provide new value. For example, and I think this is a really unique example. There's a company called Automated Insights, and it's a company that takes in structured data and creates everyday narrative on top of it. So they're basically they create just paragraph stories based on structured data from APIs, right? So what they're doing for us right now, they're consuming our API by getting the structured, very discrete data points, and they're building stories on top of the data points, like, oh, this BMW X4 is a sporty a crossover SUV that provides X amount larger cabin size than the X3 or whatever that narrative is, but it's a narrative that's easy for everybody in the world to understand, instead of just looking at the data points, not understanding what the hell that is, But the great thing here is that we're taking that narrative now and consuming it on our website and offering it to our consumers. So it's very interesting that a company is using our data to provide new value that we are consuming in return. So I thought that was a really good example of another power of the API, is to generate new value for you, as the originator of the data.
The whole thing comes full circle.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
So for others that are hoping to apply these principles to maybe some sort of internal initiative they have, or some idea, maybe a senior leader's pet project in the organization, or those types of things, how would you suggest that they get started? What worked for you as far as some of those first steps?
First steps is to get support. Get support. Talk to people. Take them out to lunch. Get your story out there and see who's interested in supporting you and getting behind this initiative. I think that would be the single most important thing that you can do. So if you have an idea if you're a startup and you have an idea as a single founder, what do you do? you go out and try to get a co-founder, right? You talk to people, you find out who's the best from your friends, from your network, that who's the best person that could actually be invested in the idea, get behind it, and get on board to help you out, because you cannot do it alone. And once you create that circle of support, that's when you can actually, because the circle of support will give you ideas to build on top of your ideas and kind of hone the idea down to make sure that you're successful. So that, I would say, that's the most important thing that you need to do right away.
Love it. Yeah, you know I know that I can't think of the book at the moment. There's one where at the beginning of the book they actually go into the different personas of innovators, right? And you've got the visionary, you've got the connector, you've got these different archetypes, and it sounds like you probably fit very nicely into that connector archetype, that like the relationship building and understanding others and those types of things, that you play in that space very strongly. I love that perspective.
Yeah, it helps if you like to eat and you like to, go out and have fun. So it's always good. I find that, talking to people over a meal is always the best thing in the world. Don't talk in the office. Go outside. Take them out to lunch. People kind of let their guard down and just be themselves. Be the people who they are. In the office, people are like, oh, I'm the CTO or I'm the CMO. But outside, there's just people, So it's important to do that.
So I imagine during the formation or the beginning of your idea, you put on 10 to 15 pounds. You're having to do like 4 of those a day.
That's why I run and I cycle, because it's super easy to put on the pounds. But I did put on pounds, thankfully. I lost it now, but awesome. Because you get stress, and I stress eat a lot too, so. It's not good.
Do you have suggestions about? You talked about it at the beginning, and I think we went through the happy path for most of it. But during the times when you were coming up against opposition and having people, be resistant to your ideas, how do you keep going? How do you power through that so that you make sure to get to the thing you really believe in?
Right. I love a good challenge. Like I'm heading the mobile strategy at Edmunds right now, trying to figure out how we can make mobile successful. And it seems like they're always putting me in situations where the problem is really humongous, and trying to figure it out. I love a challenge like that, and I love to prove people wrong. I think it's the competitive nature in me, I guess. No, but I have to be really convinced about the potential, right? If I'm not really convinced, if I don't see it, I'm not going to be able to sustain that excitement or that passion or that energy. So if I do see it, if I know it exists and I know that it's there, I kind of use the detractors and the criticism as kind of like fuel to get me to prove them wrong, and to get me to do a better job at what I'm doing. So don't ever let it. So here's the thing: the moment you have detractors and the moment you have criticism, know that you're doing something right. Right? If people don't, if you're doing something that's inconsequential, people are not going to care either way, whether it's support you or like even care to criticize you. So. I would say if you believe in it, it all comes down in, do you see it? Do you see the goal? Do you see the end vision? Do you have that vision, and can you see it? And if you do, and if you believe in it, then more criticism that you get and more like detraction that you get from different people is basically kind of like validation that you're onto something big.
That's awesome. Awesome advice.
Absolutely. So we are about out of time. I want to be respectful of what we had booked with you, Ismail. So definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey with us. If folks want to be able to get in touch with you, can you provide some details, as well as maybe talk a little bit about where folks can learn more about Hackamotive and the Edmunds API?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Twitter at Elshareef. It's first name, initial, and my last name, or you can email me at ilshareef@edmunds.com. If you want to take advantage of our open data and check out the developer portal, you can go to developer.edmunds.com. And also check out our public events like hackamotive.com and fastlane.accelerator.com. And by the way, Fastlane is an accelerator that came out of Hackamotive because we decided to take some of the top performers out of Hackamotive and give them 3 months worth of support and mentorship to get their ideas to the next level. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and actually we had a couple of the Fastlane teams on and did some coaching with them in some previous episodes. So if you go back in our archives and take a look at I think the episode we had with Tristan Cromer, and then I think the one with Alistair Kroll, both of those we had some of the Fastlane teams that we were coaching. So you can definitely see those teams are in the Fastlane for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I saw both episodes. With Albayet and Beacon. I remember that.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yep, good stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you both for your time today. I think we got some really valuable and important stuff. And for those of you watching, if you learned something useful, post it in the comments. Let us know what you're learning from these. Give it a thumbs up, that kind of stuff. Give us some feedback so we can keep making these better. And we look forward to talking with you next week.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Bye.